Hello, my pleasure seekers, and welcome to today's beautiful episode with the wonderful Shayna Hiller. I am so excited to have her. As always, we've been chatting for the first 10, 15 minutes about life. So, Shayna, over to you, honey. Who are you and what is going on in your life today?
Oh my gosh, great question. Well, hello. So grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Lucy, for having me on. I'm Shayna Hiller. I've been, who am I? I'm not going to spend the entire hour talking about that. But in short, I have been teaching yoga for almost 20 years. And over the past, I guess, I find that my professional life, I've also been doing health coaching, wellness coaching for many years. And I find that my professional life runs parallel to my personal healing evolution. So over the past 4 years or so, I've discovered the Tao Tantric arts and sacred feminine healing and the path of pleasure. And so I've been sharing that, very similar probably to what you share and what your listeners are interested in, especially for feminine awakening. And so that's something that I've been shifting into lately. Right now, I'm actually in Bali in my little villa room, preparing actually for an upcoming retreat, a women's sensuality retreat that I'm hosting next week. So this felt just so perfect to be able to just tap into all the magic and juice of pleasure and just to activate what's about to happen on this retreat. So here we
How
are.
exciting! Oh my gosh. Perfect, perfect, perfect timing. So you
Yeah.
mentioned, I love this. So thank you for sharing. You mentioned obviously that your career has like grown as you have grown and changed. So how have you come now into the sort of feminine sensuality space? And how have you become the woman that you are to be able to hold that space? Because that's a big responsibility, no pressure.
It's it's a big one, and I'm happy that no one told, well, I don't know if I'm happy that nobody told me before, but I think I am in retrospect because it's like I'm just doing it. I'm just going and I'm learning through experience. And I feel like that's also like how we evolve as leaders and teachers as well, is just like, here I am, I'm showing up for this. It really does feel like a calling. That being said, there's a part of me that's like, gosh, this is a lot. This is like a lot. And I was actually just on the phone today with a former mentor of mine, dear friend, talking about, gosh, should I have just stuck with yoga? I had been teaching yoga for so long. I still teach yoga. I incorporate it into everything that I teach, but I can do it with my eyes closed. I know it like the back of my hand. And they reminded me that this is just a new evolution. This is just a new phase of finding my voice yet again in this new space and building the capacity to hold the space for this deeper work, which ultimately transformed my life. So going back to your initial question of, how did this new branch of the tree, ultimately in my career, my life purpose, if you want to call it, how did that begin to sprout? And funnily enough, it actually happened here in Bali. So I came to Bali for the first time by myself. I'm weird with time. Approximately 6 years ago. I think it was about 6 years ago. And I just like forget like timing of things. I'm like, it's now. But about 6 years ago, I came, it was a lot of alignment and synchronicity that brought me here for the first time. And it was actually one of the few times that I was in Bali, not to run a retreat or a teacher training. It was purely for pleasure. And it was a desire that I had. And because of that desire, I manifested the conditions and circumstances to bring me there. Uh, rewind. At the time, I had not, I don't know if this is TMI for your listeners, probably not, but I had not gotten my period, my menstrual cycle for 10 years. Mind
Wow.
you, I've been doing yoga and meditating every day and eating super clean and doing all
Yeah.
the detoxes and like all the things checked off the list forever. I wasn't connected to my cycle whatsoever, nor did I actually feel like anything was missing because I was operating 99.9, let's actually just call it 100% from my masculine energy for so long, like
Yes.
from here only. But I appeared very feminine. My
Oh
hair
my gosh.
extensions, my whole everything just like exuded feminine, but on the inside and who I was, I just I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was very much in the yogic path, which, from a, if we want to talk yogic philosophy, is more of a masculine path. There's a saying by Osho says that yoga is the path of deprivation with awareness. So I was like going to India, going to the ashrams. How little can I eat? I was like not into the material pleasures. I thought that would take me away from my spiritual path.
Mm,
Whereas the more tantric viewpoint, if you want to look at it from a lineage perspective, talks about Tantra is the path of indulgence with awareness. How can I
yes.
actually experience my senses as a pathway to greater spiritual growth and evolution? And so seeing the body as a temple. And so once I started to learn about that, slowly it started through books, actually through reading, I got very inspired and intrigued, but I was still scared. And the fear, I think, has to do with, oh gosh, just growing up in a sex negative culture and past traumas and not trusting myself, and my body is bad and sexuality is shameful and anything that feels good is a sin ultimately. So let me just deprive myself and be disciplined. So I planned this trip to Bali. It happened, and mind you, didn't get my period, finally started to realize that that was an issue. But it took me
Right.
many years. I was kind of like, I'm lucky.
Mm,
I don't deal with PMS. I don't get cramps. I'm just kind of even keel
crazy.
all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is also like a masculine a perception, right? Like, thank God I don't get my period. Like, thank God.
Yes,
Yeah, I can so
exactly.
relate to this.
Ah, and like when I had it, it was a nuisance ultimately. And I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't taught. Like we were, back in the day, back in the day, there were rituals for women
Yeah.
for various rites of passage in their life: birth, first menstrual cycle, menopause, coming of age,
Virginity.
marriage. I mean,
Yeah.
all different that experiences that women pass through, phases that women pass through, that now just it's like, oh, am I dying? There's blood coming out of my, like, what's happening here? Like, I didn't know. So I figured out, I eventually realized, because I was evolving, oh, this is an issue. And this actually was one of the biggest teachings of, like, no matter how much like stuff we do for our healing, no matter how many books we read or supplements we take or yoga classes we go to, if we're not actually ready and desiring deeply, like, and surrendered to, like, I actually really want to heal, it won't happen. So I think that, like, I was doing a lot of things, but deep down, I didn't necessarily want to ultimately re-inhabit my body, because for the body to be healthy enough to have a cycle, we have to be well nourished on all levels. There has to be enough jing qi. There has to be enough sexual energy and energy in the body for that downward flow to happen. And I was just standing on my head all the time, like drinking green juice. I still drink green juice, not knocking the juice, but I also eat bread now. So it's all about balance ultimately. But I really wasn't in my body. So
Mm,
came to Bali purely. It was like the first time that I gave myself permission to do something purely out of desire. Like, oh, well, what's the meaning? What am I, like, I should be working or something. No, I just wanted to go. Don't know why, just did it. On the plane to Bali, I got my period. And I remember I was wearing, a friend of mine, she lent me a pair of gray sweatpants. And I felt so bad at first because I didn't have tampons or pads. I had not purchased them in a decade. I didn't have them with me. And I'm on my way to Sydney, Australia, actually.
of
That was my
course.
stop. And I'm
That's
like,
so
I'll have,
funny.
yeah,
I
I'm like, they're
always
gonna
have the same situation. That's always the same for me. I always come my period on the way to Sydney. Always.
oh,
Always.
interesting. There must be
Yeah.
something in the air there,
Yeah.
because, and it was a full moon.
There you
So long
go.
story short, that lasted for 16 days. I actually ended up getting like super high fever. I got sick. It felt like a huge purging. Uh, and I truly mark it in my little timeline of my life as like a spiritual awakening. I had a spiritual awakening, you could say, when I discovered yoga, because that taught me about just self-awareness and the fact that I have choice and I have consciousness, and just to become aware of my patterns and just that awareness and presence and consciousness. But this did something that shifted me, the big shift from operating primarily from my masculine to beginning to actually feel like a woman again. And I
Mm,
say again because I definitely felt like a woman when I was in my early teens, when I first started menstruating, but
mm,
I was ashamed. for that, because at that time when, my hormones were just beginning to flourish and move and shift and evolve, I was shamed for being sexual. So I cut that off. Like, I ultimately caused my own drought, if you will. But it's all perfect, because if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be able to come back with this newfound appreciation, reverence, curiosity about this, about my cycle. So ever since then, it's been pretty regular. I just have to make sure that I am taking care of myself and honoring my phases. Otherwise, if I overwork, she's like, no. So now I have a really good relationship, and that's what has brought me to supporting women in understanding the wisdom of their womb and using pleasure as a healing modality when it comes to anything from attracting more intimacy into your life to growing a business, or really manifesting whatever you desire in this reality. And there's a lot that we haven't been told, a lot of wisdom that's been kept intentionally, especially from, I want to say, initially, I want to say womb bearers. That being said, this applies to women who don't even have a physical womb. I work with a lot of clients who've undergone hysterectomies and who are even in menopause. And even then, there's a vortex here, energetic, that is so potent. If we just tune into it for a second, because I mean, that is the cauldron of creative energy, of the possibility of creating life. And we can create so much from that space when we understand, when we release the shame, first of all, from eons and eons of suppression of feminine, to learning how to cultivate our energy in a new way and connect with our bodies in a more harmonious way too. Because, we've also been conditioned to believe that there is intrinsically something wrong with our bodies if we don't look like that advertisement.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that is because I'm at the moment I'm studying breath work at the moment, because similar to you, yoga, masculine, go, 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 and no shame. And I don't want to shame masculine and feminine and polarize them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like, when you tell a woman, and myself included, like, what does your intuition say? You can see a woman's face being like, oh, because we know, we actually know, we know the wrong people we're dating, we know the wrong careers we're in, we know the wrong cities we're in, like, we know all these things. And for women that are listening right now, they're like, this sounds real woo woo, like, holy shit balls, what is this? And I get it, I love this chat. But what would you say to someone that is very like, go, 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 has their lists to tick, periods annoying in the way, to actually slow down, which I know a lot of people don't like that phrase, and tap into who they are as a woman? Because we have so much superpower, like you said.
I mean, you really answered the question by asking the question of like, get curious about this superpower.
Yeah.
It's funny because you say the woo-woo thing, and I did a training a couple of years ago, and we actually learned what the origin of woo-woo. And there were these tribes of woo women in China that were they were the medicine women. They were the shamans. They were the priestesses. They were the ones that had this healing energy, ultimately, that was incredible. And then, of course, down the line, that didn't get brought over to the West. It actually didn't even stay so much in the East, because people couldn't, it wasn't so linear, it wasn't so logical, it was more mysterious and mystical. But to answer your question in a way, because I still I have a very, very healthy relationship with my masculine energy. The shift, I don't even, I've been trying to toy with, like, I don't even love calling it masculine and feminine, because all of a sudden we go into gender, all of it, yin and yang, sun and moon, dark and light, like whatever you want to, like, it's an energetic that we all, whatever you identify as, embody. We all have these aspects of the universe inside of us at all times. We sleep and we wake up, right? There's a part of us, whether or not you're in touch with it, like you mentioned, that is intuitive, that is emotional, that is sensitive and sensual. There's a part of us that needs to, show up on the podcast on time, and be organized and do our taxes, and right. So it's very important to understand that this is not better or worse. This is actually all about harmony. If you've ever seen that yin yang symbol, a lot of my teachings come from Taoism, which is a universal language. Ultimately, it's non-dogmatic. It's just about nature, and that is this combination of dark and light. So it's very that. So I want to preface this with, please, this is not about, oh, the masculine is bad and we have to shift all to the feminine. You know, depending on who I'm working with, there are some women who come to do this work, and I'm like, we need to bring some discipline and structure in, because
Yeah.
there's too much flowiness and too much. It's just, you know, like, let's get that, and then we become masters. We become masters of our energy. We understand more of who we are in our full spectrum selves, which is magic. So to start, I would get curious about, if you are interested, like I said, you know, if you're curious, if, for example, your period is a burden for you, or you're looking to build a deeper connection with your intuition or your body's wisdom. You may have heard, like, listen to your body. If that feels like, wait, what? How do I don't
Yeah.
know, you know, like, if you were to tell me that years ago, I'd be like, but
Oh,
my body's not telling me like something good. I'm
yeah,
not.
like I know I can move, I understand.
Yeah. It can be very ambiguous. Start to get curious. So it's like, I'm not even going to say like, do this or don't do that, or, you know, you just get curious, because that's what led me to seeking something that was less logical, but in a way that still met me where I was at. Because there were a lot, even the training that I did, like, if I were to have read the website for that, like even 5 years ago, 6 years ago, no, too out there for me. But as I'm evolving, it's like certain things I'm like, oh, womb wisdom, oh, sacred feminine energy, oh, like intuition, oh, embodiment. It's just, I just started to hear it more, and I started to hear it in my own being. The more I nourished myself, the more I slowed down. So there's actually a wonderful book by a woman, Alyssa Vitti, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it
Oh,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you know it, In the Flow?
The flow, yeah, yeah.
So that's like kind of like something like that, or just like learning about like the phases from, you know, an actual like physiological standpoint of like what's happening hormonally. Like, why do I get PMS? You know, which I have a few different acronyms for PMS. Please make space.
Oh my God, I love that.
Isn't that good? Please make space. What's another one? Oh gosh, I had another one. Yeah, it was like pleasure, magic, and sensuality, or something like that. Like, you can transform this time of your cycle, of your cycle, ultimately, to something where you really tap into that wise woman within. So learning about the phases, learning about what's happening on a hormonal level, being willing to experiment, for example. So if you're anything like my former self, I I am like really, I used to be, I still can be, so I've got to catch myself. I can be really rigid in like,
Yeah.
I have to do yoga every single day. And it's like the same thing every single day at the same time, which is very important to have a sense of structure, and just, again, very important. But I was tied to it to the extent that if I didn't do it, I was like freaking out,
Oh my God,
and would
yes, I
do
totally
it when I
get
didn't want to do it. Exactly. I would do things that when I didn't want to, and I would like, there's a fine line, you know, with like, you know, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, like, oh, I don't really want to. And then I actually, oh, I did want to. I feel so good. But this was different. This was like my intuition was like, Shayna, maybe you should just take a walk today. Maybe you don't have to do 30 minutes of cardio every single day. Maybe what you've been told and what you've been so deeply ingrained to believe to be true is actually causing more stress and buildup in your system. And maybe yin yoga could support you. You know, even yoga in its essence, the spiritual teaching of yoga, the philosophical understanding of yoga is, notice your tendencies, notice where you lean. Do I lean to the yang? Do I like, am I just lean to the yin? Do the opposite of the thing that you tend to do, because that's what's going to bring you balance. And that's tough sometimes, where it's like, well, I'm not that kind of person. But if you know that by getting curious about that other side of you that, you know, might be slowing down, knowing that quote unquote slowing down, which really isn't the right word, like you said, it's not, it's tuning in, it's pulling back. You know, if you want to if you want to shoot bow and arrow, since we're
it.
getting woo, let's go back to our ancestral roots. You got to pull back in order for it to go ahead, in order for it to shoot forward. And similarly, the feminine, the yin, the moon, right? It's more subtle. It's not something that we're, you know, it's not a pre-made formula. it's our own unique individual blueprint, and it does have the capacity to bring us not only the ability to manifest, because mind you, when I was operating primarily from my yang energy, I was getting a lot done per se. I was productive, but I wasn't at ease in my being, and it was very hard. It was hard.
I get that. And I think that's when it comes down to business as well. Like I find sometimes I go all in on my feminine, and I'm like, yes, and that was what I did last year. I was very in my feminine, and why I'm living at my parents right now because nothing got done.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then I learned the other part of me was so my masculine, so disciplined, and I had a disordered eating for like 22 years, and that was very disciplined, like very in my masculine. Yeah. And then when I overcame that, I went straight in my feminine. So I'm now at this point where I'm like, and I know a lot of listeners have body, they're working with their body image and how they feel about themselves. What do you suggest then to women that go one way and then the other, like the absolute extremes, and they don't know the balance? Because balance, we've all heard this word balance, but we're like, what the freak is balance?
Yeah. Oh gosh, this is phenomenal. Lucy, there's so much wisdom in that question, and that it reminds me, and it's so important to shed this light, because it's almost like what do you say if that happens? What do you say when that happens? If you've been operating from any extreme, ultimately be prepared for the other extreme. In one of my professional trainings, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, we had a guest speaker, Janine Roth. You may know her. She's an incredible speaker and author for women. She has many books, and one of them, because I also suffered from an eating disorder for many years, and that also, there's like, girl, there's a lot of parallels happening here. Who would have thunk we just met? But there was a book she wrote called Women, Food, and God. And it was very interesting and shed a lot of light on this. And again, even just, studying the tantric path and embodiment, I started to get curious, because I was like on the brink of not being here anymore, and something needed to shift. But she mentioned something, and I'll never forget this. And I forget a lot of things, but she had a quote that she said, "For every fast comes an equal and opposite binge." So to the extent that you've been depriving yourself, meaning when I say to the extent that you have not been honoring nature, that you've been using force or your own mind to like override a natural function, eventually things are going to have to balance themselves out, because nature always gets her way. It may not be fun, right? Like this is why when people are chronically, like, so let's just say, for example, like people just eat crap their entire life. Like, I feel fine, I feel fine, I feel fine. Sure, the body will, continue for as long, but then below the surface, eventually it's like, why am I sick all of a sudden? All of a sudden I just got sick. It's like, no, it's not all of a sudden, it's a culmination of things. So, so I knew I had experienced that wisdom. I had heard her say that when I was getting out of my eating disorder phase, and I would eat everything in sight.
Yeah.
I was ravenous.
I was the same. Yeah.
And then I hadn't yet learned about guilt, or I felt so much guilt, and I was out of control, and I gained a lot of weight, and it went the other extreme. But my higher self was witnessing the whole shebang, saying, oh yeah, this is just that thing when you life is balancing itself out through you. Just be patient. It's not permanent, it's temporary. That's, above and beyond all of it. Just remember that this too shall pass. And eventually things balance themselves out to such a degree that, there's zero charge around food. In fact, it's like one of my greatest pleasures. My body, I don't even weigh myself anymore. I used to be like every single day to a T, like I feel like I literally took a key that I had the entire time that I didn't even know or realize that I had in my pocket, and I unlocked the door to my jail cell and let myself out. And I didn't know that was possible, because I was so locked in the constructs of my mind and fear and rigidity, and like, what if I let go, all hell will break loose. but it's like to be able to swim in the pool of blissipline. Blissipline is like that gentle discipline where like you trust yourself. You still have boundaries, but it doesn't have to rule your life and take up all that space in your mind. And it does not have to be at the cost of your pleasure, because that's another thing that, I mean, this is obviously your line of work, and I'm so thankful that you're sharing this message with everyone. I just didn't know that feeling good was actually good for my health.
Yes. Isn't that
So like, where did that come from?
And so when you went through that adjustment of like balancing out your relationship with food, how did the rest of your world change as well?
Everything changed.
Yeah.
Everything. Well, first of all, when I was at my low, so these are all labels. I just don't like labels, but it's like, well, what do I call things then? But if I wanted to define, this eating disorder, it was orthorexia, which is like an unhealthy obsession with purity and cleanliness. So like I was getting colonics all the time. I was fasting. I was trying to eat just air and be a breatharian and get sunlight and just not be a person ultimately, which like, where did that come from? Where I just don't even want to exist. Like, why do I want to be so light that I become air? Like, what is that about? Like, why am I leaving my body? I was very dissociated for a very long time. So when you get to a certain weight, and obviously it's different for everybody based on their constitution, but when you get to a certain weight, like vital functions shut down that we might even take for granted or think are just like part of who we are, like well, definitely certain organ systems, but emotions. I had no emotions. I didn't really feel. That's why when I said earlier about I was, very much, linear, even keel all the time, not connected with my emotional being. So everything was just kind of average, neutral all the time. So my life was a little bland. And I also was eating bland food. And my life was bland. It was predictable. It was, I don't want to use the word boring because I was never bored, but I didn't know what I was missing, and there was not a richness to it. Also, things were a struggle. I've noticed that, as mentioned earlier, like with business, for example, I've been running my own business now for almost 20 years. But in that, like the level of exertion and just, well, for many years I actually moved home with my parents in my mid-20s because I could not function personally. Like I literally could not function, and I just was like, I just want to be cradled in this womb forever. But I did start to work, but it was just so much pressure. Everything was overwhelming, ultimately intense all the time. So that's where allowing myself more pleasure, consciously choosing. I also studied nutrition, so I understand how different food doesn't just build your body. It builds your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, your sense of self, your connection to higher power. Like it is like really like that's why I'm so excited now. I love experimenting with like just feeling grounded. I love feeling like I'm down to the earth and I've got nourishment and sustenance in my body. Like it's really amazing. And I love my body, and I love not needing to have a flat stomach. I like don't do core work anymore. I walk, I exercise every day. I hike, I do my yoga, but I used to be so anal about I have to do this daunting abdominal sequence every single day. It's like such a silly thing, but if I'm in the mood, I'll do it. But the core of this is that something really significant shifted once I started to embody that which I had been learning about. There's one thing to like you were saying earlier about balance, like we all like hear about it or we read about it. I had been reading about things, but not really putting it into practice. And I got to a point of feeling so sick and tired of feeling sick and tired and of being so in my head about everything and so rigid, to the extent that I didn't even have holidays with my family because I had to eat alone. I had a specific breathing practice that I had to do and a chewing practice where I would chew each bite like 50 times while like breathing deeply into my belly. And it was like a meal would take me 2 hours. It was like not the good kind of ritual. So my entire life changed. I actually became, well, first of all, my energy came back. I was growing whiskers because that's how thin I got. The body started to grow. I forget the name of it. There's a
I know
specific
what you
name.
mean. I've
You
had that
know,
as well. Yeah, I remember a hairdresser once for me asked me outrightly. He was like, "Are you funny with food?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Because you have facial hair." And I was like, "What?"
mm,
At the time. And I know he was coming from a kind place, and bless him, he's not on this planet anymore. But like, I know he was coming from a kind place, and it was almost like the universe being like, "Hun, this is serious." Like
yeah,
it's
sometimes.
fur. You develop fur because your body's so cold, it needs
Yep.
warmth. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe, I don't think that I've like, we have so much in common. It's
I know
like,
this is kind of crazy. It's not crazy. It's
really,
actually so much
you know,
sense.
it's totally aligned. This is the magic.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like things like, so my whole, my everything, where your mind goes, energy flows. And my mind was just so focused on like control, just trying to control everything. And especially I took it out through food. And that's usually just a fear of letting go. Um, it's really a trauma response that I really wasn't aware of, and I've done a lot of work to get to the root of why or where that stemmed from. uh, there's a lot of supposition out there, I don't know, but what I'm more concerned about, instead of looking at the past, is moving forward consciously and continuing to clear myself and to nourish myself and to take good care of myself now, and to see my body as a temple, is actually to understand that my senses are a gift, a temporary gift, a blessing, that we get to be in a body, and one day we won't be anymore. So while we're here, Tantra is all about bringing the spirit back into the body. So they're not these separate things anymore of like, oh, in order to be spiritual, I have to, because I really was like in that holier than thou mentality, where it's like strict raw vegan, like if any, it's like, again, material pleasures are a distraction or disturbance. It's like, no, 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 I was missing a point. So as I started to embrace a different path, for me, like for some people, as mentioned, if you're a highly indulgent person and you do not have any self-control, the yogic path will be good. But for someone like me who was like super rigid, and
Yeah.
I was curious about, I had been reading all these books about, conscious pleasure and all this. And so I started to tiptoe into that world. And I'll say a quick story of, because there's these little snippets that I don't forget that felt like turning points for me. I was out for a dinner. I went out for, I was not social. I was like a monk. In fact, I was planning on becoming a monk, but then
Oh.
I got a download. I was going to shave my head, move to a monastery in Japan.
Oh.
And I chose to move to LA and get hair extensions and just let LA be my ashram.
Thank
But
God
I
for
went,
that.
thank God for that. We would not be sitting here right now. I would just be silent
Well,
somewhere.
maybe we both would be monks, because I feel like I
Yeah.
kind of went down that route as well at one point, where I was like prepared for, yeah, no materialistic. And I love nice things. Oh, I fucking love them. Yeah.
Love. Oh, I'm upset. But I was always like, oh, you can't have that. This is like a whole other conversation around scarcity. But growing up, anything nice, I had really great taste from a young age in everything, food, men,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh.
things like clothes, all of it. You
Mm.
can't have that. It was always like, you can't have that, or you're wrong for wanting. So
Yes.
desire
Oh my
or
God.
being.
Or make the most of it while it lasts, like all this stuff, which is no disrespect to like caretakers and parent stuff, but it's all generational stuff. We're not born to be
Absolutely.
at
It's
all.
not their fault either. Exactly. It's just
No.
passed down. It's just so passed down and they're not
Yeah.
aware. And it's funny because my mom and I are super besties,
Mm.
and she's like doing the work, also the
Yeah.
work, the play, the self-discovery in her 70s. And she's always like, oh, Shay, like, I hope I didn't, like, I wish I knew all this stuff. It's like, no, it's okay. It's never too late uh, to do the work on behalf of our ancestors as well, who, are coming from war times or suppression. I mean, this runs so deep in the lineage. So it's really, it's no one's fault. But uh, that being said, there was definitely, it's just so interesting that there's so many parallels. But one of the turning points was, I went to this dinner. I was invited to, and I felt safe going. So I needed to feel safe in order to do things that involved something outside of my routine and my rigid structure, because I did have desires. Like I wanted to like do things, but I just was nervous that, I don't know, I would have to eat something bad, or I would be off my routine. Like I was just so in my control. But it was with these two former monks and a friend of mine, and I knew that they were vegetarian, and I knew that they had lived in an ashram, and I was like, okay, I'll go out for dinner with this crew, because I was inspired by them, and I knew it would probably be, a conscious, healthy meal. And we ended up going to this super, super high-end fancy restaurant that I normally wouldn't have chosen. I thought they were just going to go to some, organic vegan hippie spot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, ooh, like I like me a gourmet place, but I was like, oh, what am I going to eat? Like in my head already before I even get there. I'm like, looking at the menu. I'm like, I'll just have a salad. Okay. I'm just going to have a salad, and then maybe later I'll have my own food. Okay. So I had my plan, good to go. I'll just be social for 5 minutes. We
Wow.
get there, and it was a place that you can only order like appetizer, like little tapas. And I mean, everything looked so good, but it's like stuff I would never eat. And I was very surprised that they would eat it, because from their lineage and their background of who they were as monks was very simple vegetarian food. So I'm like, this is like, someone's like deep fried. It has these heavy sauces, all these different appetizers. And I watched the woman who I was with take a bite of something that I would at the time never eat. I don't even remember what it was, some fried vegetable or something. And she took the bite very consciously. I could tell, very slow. She was looking at it first, smelling it. She made that sound, and she took a small bite and put the rest down. And she was eating with her hands. And she sat back in her chair and chewed so slow, and her whole being just softened and relaxed. And all of a sudden, she started to laugh. Like as she was eating, she just was like in this orgasmic state of laughter and joy and gratitude for this experience, that she was a sensual experience of eating this food that just tasted so good, very good quality. Was it organic, vegan, raw kale? No, but her slowing down to receive it with reverence, right? Not with guilt of like, oh, I shouldn't be having this because it tastes good, or I should be, stuffing this and feel guilty about it after. She was fully present with the experience of pleasure, and she exuded health. She exuded a connected person. So I was inspired by that. I just had an experience that was like, huh, I wonder if I could slowly start to incorporate more pleasure into my life, especially in the form of food, and be slow and intentional with it, and make it into a ritual ultimately. And that was one of the starts of eventually going down this path of self-trust, and allowing pleasure to be a cornerstone of the healing journey.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. But while you were going through that path and taking the first steps, how did you center yourself so you weren't going back into old patterns? Because that's so ingrained, right? That side, that part of you, and
Oh, yeah.
it's kept you safe. That's the big thing, particularly as women, the whole safety thing. How do you
Absolutely.
do to that?
Well, that's a great question. And it goes back to discipline ultimately, which is boundaries ultimately. Like it's not black or white. It's not one or the other. So for example, I am a very organized, disciplined person still. So knowing now that pleasure is important for me, that I can have things that I desire,
Yeah.
I I will factor that in. So I still I don't just, eat at 1 a.m. and like, I'm not just like, so I still have times, because I know when my body feels best. I know that I like to eat lighter in the morning, and I like to have a big meal in the evening. Some diet book might tell me something different, but I actually am tuned into my body's wisdom, and I follow that. So for example, going back to the cycle, around my luteal phase, about a week before I get my period, I crave carbs.
I'm
Now, if I
starving. Yeah.
right, I want salty, carby foods. So I go all out. And now, am I going to go get Wonder Bread? No, because I care about my vessel. I care about my temple, and I want to give it only the best quality. So this comes down to like embodied self-love. And I will have my sourdough avocado toast with butter and eggs. And I'm just listening to my body. These are things I would have never allowed myself. So I shift my diet based on my cycle. That is a really great starting point for women, especially, to understand or to get curious about how can I still have a sense of order, which is very important. No, I have certain rules or gentle boundaries. I don't like eating after a certain time of night because it's not good for digestion, and I know it's going to affect my sleep, and I don't want to feel heavy when I go to sleep. Right? I have certain rules, but they're not, I don't even like to call them rules. They're just what I know works for me. And it's, we have to have those boundaries. Otherwise we're just, spilling all over the place. But are they yours or are they someone else's?
That's the
And is
thing.
it too much of that and not enough of the other? So we've got to take responsibility ultimately for our own how we're operating and how we're treating ourselves, and to know that we can be both. We can enjoy the pleasures of life. Start with one thing a day and make it a ritual. If there's something that you've been craving, and honestly, I would go as far as to say anything right now, anything that you've been craving. I mean, not a drug or something that's going to harm you, but like a food, give you, instead of like, no, I can't. Or if you emotionally eat it, or like scarf it down and feel guilt, like we talked about earlier. What if you were to make that thing into a meditation? So tomorrow's meditation, you don't have to sit with your eyes closed for 10 minutes if that's your jam, if you meditate, right? Or if you think you should be meditating. Instead, I want you to go get that muffin or that whatever it is, avocado toast. Now that I said that, and you're like, ooh, maybe I want avocado toast. Whatever it is, that chocolate bar. And when you take it and bring it out in front of you, play some of your favorite music. Don't be distracted, ideally. Don't do it while you're on the computer. You deserve to be fully present with receiving, at least for this ritual, with this nourishment in front of you. Look at it. Tune into how your body feels. Like you're probably going to start to, your body's going to produce saliva. Feel how your whole entire energetic system shifts. Look at it. So you don't have to be, crazily like, is weird woo about it, but just take some time to observe this. Smell it. Be with the sense of smell. When you put it in your mouth, put the rest down, whether you use a fork if you need to use a fork. I'm giving you permission to use your hands. Wash your hands. Get in touch with that thing that you desire and give yourself some time to be with it, because chances are you'll also be able to kind of gauge, do I actually really want this? Or am I looking for sweetness in another form, and I'm, seeking it through food? But if you can really be present, it really comes down to being present with it and allowing yourself to enjoy a sensual moment. Taste. What a gift. It will transform your hormones. It'll transform your body's stress response system. It'll lower the levels of cortisol, which actually contribute to inflammation and body fat. So meaning you can be eating very healthy food in a stressed out state, and it will not contribute to your desired, experience of your body. And you can eat what you would perhaps classify as a little naughty, but with consciousness, intention, slowing down. Again, you can't fool yourself though. Like, eat vegetables also, like kids say, I'm just going to have Oreo cookies for the rest of my life consciously.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully that wouldn't be the case anyway. Hopefully that wouldn't be the conclusion. Like, be aware that the mind can be very cunning sometimes. Like, it'll take something and make it into something else. Your higher self knows ultimately, but making it into a ritual, and slowing down, chewing well, breathing while you're chewing, enjoying the sense of taste, like just having what you want will bring you more of what you want. It's as simple as that. And it comes down to, can I trust myself to give myself what I want? Is that what I really want? So again, get curious about your true desires. Desire is not something here. Desire is something in the lower dantian, in the Tao it's called. So for men, it's the reproductive section right underneath the navel. For women too, the whole womb space. That's where true desire originates, and that's where true wisdom and intuition also exist and live. So we can be guided by our body's wisdom and trust that. You're not going to find this in a diet book.
No, for obvious reasons, right?
Exactly. But so this is what I love, because my nutrition training was the best and the most confusing thing in the world, because we learned from experts in all the different fields of diets and modalities that are meant to be the most healing thing. Here's someone who's an expert in vegetarianism. Here's an expert in the paleo thing. Here's an expert in eating no carbs. Here's an expert in all carbs, Ayurveda, this and that. And they're all so convincing. They've got the science to back it up. And if I would be eating nothing and air if I were to follow all of them, because they're all contradicting each other as well. So it's important to know certain things. Like I learned a lot from my raw food days. I still drink green juice every single day. You know, I learned a lot about how grains affect my body. But I also know that, you know, some quinoa, some sourdough bread, like really ground me.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's just, it's a mixture of like using that knowledge that we get from outside and mixing it with our own inner wisdom and designing our own life, designing our own way of eating, and knowing it doesn't have to be the same every day.
Yeah.
The whole same every day thing. Yeah, that's the yang. That's like every day the sun rises, it peaks and it sets. And this is where we think we have to be the same amount productive on a daily basis because we're following the rhythm of the sun. Yet, and this is where the yin teachings are coming in strong right now, like a tidal wave for any gender and everyone. Our entire collective, the entire planet is in dire need of a shift to a slower vibration. Again, it's not the slow that we think of as in not productive, but in realizing that you can be more productive than you ever thought was possible by pulling back. Right? By balancing out the doing with being, by balancing out the inhale with exhale. And what do we all say that we crave in anyway? Peace. I just want to relax. I just want to enjoy. I just want to like start to do it because the universe is only responding to the energy that you're putting out.
That's it.
And that's it.
Yeah. It's
so,
that, but it's an addiction. I really feel it's an addiction to being this gross word, the hustle word, the H word. You know, you've got to keep pushing, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep striving. And it's like, that's pushing it away even more. But if you look at like the corporate world, for example, traditionally, that is what the corporate world has ingrained in people and in the school systems as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
deep. This is deep. And this is why it's like little experiments, you know, with yourself. You know, just little mini experiments, and you don't have to lose the other side completely. You know, if it feels like scary to be like, wait, I'm just gonna like stop trying to do stuff. It's not that. Yeah, like, let it go and trust. And the thing is, though, you know, life will bring us to life will bring us to the truth, though. You know, it's like the quieter you become, the more you can hear. So I sometimes feel, I know for my former self, my obsession and addiction with like overworking, for example, I was total workaholic, was a distraction. It was a distraction from addressing more serious issues, such as my lack of menstruation, which I conveniently ignored for a decade because I was too busy with work. I don't have time to focus on my womb. I don't have time to, I had so many excuses. Little did I know I was blocking myself from the very thing that I actually wanted, which was ease, abundance, magic, like flow, like just joy and enjoyment and pleasure in life. We have to give ourselves pleasure if we desire pleasure. No one from the outside, nothing from the outside is going to do it. You can't effort your way to ease.
You can't effort your way to ease. That is such a good saying. Oh my God. Oh, I can chat to you all day. Oh. If anyone wants to find if anyone wants to find you, work with you, I'm assuming obviously next week's retreat is a little by the time the episode is live, we won't obviously.
Yes, it's gonna be probably in retreat, but yeah, I'll have I'm planning. So this is where the healthy masculine is really important because I like to plant seeds. It's just about not, you know, I used to be the type where I'd plant a seed and like, oh, here's the next thing I'm gonna create, but then I would like obsess about it and like just work too hard. I just plant the seed, it'll happen. I will be offering actually a virtual Womb Wisdom 101 workshop on Zoom. It's going to be like $20 in the end of the summer. And this is for those of you who actually might think some of this is a little woo-woo, but at the same time, you're like, actually, that makes sense on some level somewhere. And you're newer to the teachings, or you're intimidated. You know, because it can be I was intimidated. I was actually judgmental. A lot of women who were teaching anything like, oh God, if you say the word goddess, one more time. Like
Yeah.
I was there. And now I use the word freely, but I'm also aware that for some it's like, well, what's the reason? Like, so you'll learn more of the technology of pleasure, the science of pleasure, understanding feminine anatomy. I work primarily with women in this segment, understanding pleasure anatomy, and really how to cultivate your energy for healing, empowerment, personal growth, creativity. So that'll be happening end of the summer. Otherwise, you can find me on my website, shaynahiller.com, or on Instagram at shaynahiller. And yeah, just planting lots of seeds right now. So hopefully we'll all see them sprout and flourish together.
Of course. And the question I always like to ask my guests is, what is your simple pleasure in life? You shared a lot today, but is there one that you just love to do?
Well, because you did share that question in the beginning, so I actually got to think of an answer, because otherwise I would have probably been stuck and be
That's
like,
why I like
well,
to give people the
it's on the
heads up.
moment. Yeah, exactly. But it channeled through the moment that you gave me the heads up. So this is the channel. It's nature.
Yes.
It's getting into nature every single day. It's like, and as I'm talking, the sun just set and I'm hearing the crickets and, the smell in the air. I hike every single day. Getting into nature, especially like a well-nourished environment that's vital, reminds me that I am her, that I am Mother Earth. And it's the greatest pleasure to just be one with her. So nature is my medicine, all of it in all forms, including food.
Love that. Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. And for everything that Shayna has shared on today's show, I will have in the show notes. And if anyone wants to reach out, write a cheeky review, spicy or vanilla, please feel free to. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Bye. Mwah.
You
Hello, Johnny.